Right. Yeah, so today I'm going to be talking to you about information architecture in e-commerce. So first of all, quick introduction to myself. I'm a client partner at Resignal and a data journalist for Sistrix. Just do a little bit of work with Sistrix. In fact, at the moment we're looking at like the women's fashion industry and picking apart the winners there. So that's the kind of stuff I do for them. So, site architecture, it's obviously not everybody's dream. I just mean the dream in the context of site architecture, maybe, if you're in e-commerce. So what this is a force-directed crawl diagram. You may recognize it from tools like Sitebulb, which is where I stole this image from, or Screaming Frog also produces something like this. It's not, might look like it, but it's not like a map of internal links. It's actually like the site architecture in terms of like click depth is probably the easiest and most simple way to think about it, but it also highlights some really key issues. So for this, we're looking at the home page in the center, then the green nodes around that, probably system pages or department pages, the green nodes off the center, category pages, and then after that either product or subcategories. This is, well, it's not a reality for everybody, but it's I genuinely picked the worst case I could find here. So we've got some, the long lines coming off there, pagination chains, and some duplicate content issues, just overall a fragmented website. If your e-commerce site looks like this, then this talk is definitely going to be for you. So why does it matter? First of all, helps drive authority to the right places. So a couple of people today talked about like internal linking structures, passing authority through your website. Like you naturally generate some decent backlinks, obviously if you've got a good structure around that. And driving that authority to your high value pages is done by having a site architecture that's built for doing that. It also allows for efficient crawling and discovery. So you're not sending bots on like a crawling journey, finding like pages that are buried within your information architecture. And so if you're launching a new category, it's very easy to discover that quite quickly for search engines and also users as well. It also provides a foundation for good user experience. So I think quoting somebody that spoke a little bit earlier, basically like you satisfy your users, you satisfy search engines. So if you get this right, then it will provide you with a really good starting point. So first of all, creating a solid foundation for your site architecture. What this is basically a zoomed in sort of view of a, I guess, like menu system, if you will, from a department store. So not all sites will start at that department level, but I've included it to be relatable for everybody. So we have a department in this example of homeware, category, lighting, bedding, and furniture, and then underneath that we have the subcategories as well. In terms of like click depth, so relating this back to that force-directed crawl diagram, your department pages click depth of 1, and then category pages also click depth of 1, subcategories click depth of 2 generally. So these are like your high value subcategories really. If they're not high value, why you're calling them a subcategory. So this is basically what you're going for. Then in terms of like the click depth of those pages, of those page types, it really depends on the context of your site. So me saying your subcategories should be a click depth of 2 it doesn't always have to be that way. However, if you are, say, John Lewis, a large department store, then that might be the case because you're starting with broad categories. So in this example, John Lewis, departments across the top, and then within their menu system, they have like mainly top level categories. There's a couple of sort of like mini departments there. I think it's useful to sort of point out, I think if we go like laundry, there's probably a few other ones as well. So laundry, it'll link out into like obviously like washing machines, dryers, that sort of thing. So the categories that are sat under that. So you have to start really broad if you're a department store. And then narrow product offerings allow for a much shallower click depth. So just be aware of the context. So in this example, Adidas, we've got a department, a category, a subcategory. It's worth mentioning though that actually the Adidas site is a bit of an edge case, and I have an example of how they're building these categories through facets. So pretty much everything other than that top department page is a facet off an overarching shoes category, which I'll get into, and the problems that solves really. So this typically mirrors the in-store experience. Obviously, I think if you were gonna, like, say if you were tasked with finding a pair of running shoes in John Lewis, it would take you a lot longer than it would in a Nike store. That's the way of thinking about it, and in the context of your own site as well. So, getting really stuck into the basics here, starting with departments. So I've used Next as an example here to illustrate my point. It could be any department store really, but if I'm being fully honest, I didn't want to draw out what a department store looked like because I was already short of time creating this deck. So I print screen the Next website. So we have your typical department page layout here for homeware. Then underneath that, you go ahead and add in your categories. So in this example, I've just called out lighting, bedding and furniture. But some sites can start at this level, like I mentioned. You might only sell lighting and bedding. Be a pretty weird thing to get into, just selling lighting and bedding. But you might only sell that, or you might just sell lighting, and then the categories can be built off of that. And then on top of that, building out relevant subcategories. So this is where you get into using facets off the parent of the category, basically. So this is something that Next do. It's not unique to them. It's something that a lot of, I guess, high performers in this space would do. So like I said, subcategories, they do tend to work best from when they're built from facets of the parent category. There's obviously rules that need to be put in place, and it's not going to be a solution for everybody, but it does provide easy management and a reduced risk of duplication. When I say provides easy management, I mean once it's set up. If you're a large site that doesn't have this set up, I think on my roundtable we were talking about this before, it is a ball ache to go from not having it to having it. It takes ages, but once it's done, super easy to manage, and you can build out from there a lot easier. What I mean by this, to I guess illustrate my point, if it's not connecting, in this example we have the Next lighting category and a quick link for ceiling lights. When you click that, if you were then to go to the faceted navigation underneath, you'll notice that the facet under category for ceiling lights is selected. That is the only way the ceiling lights category page exists on this site. There isn't a subcategory for ceiling lights that has been manually created with its own product list. The reason for this is because you can incur duplicate content issues basically from the inherited facets from parent categories. So what I mean by that is obviously you'd have your all products category for, say, lighting. Like if you imagine a user browsing a lighting category, you've got 1,000 lights in there. Not every light is relevant to that user. Naturally, you want some form of facets, filters. So usually we offer like a category style filter. In this case, the category style filters are ceiling lights, floor lamps, chandeliers, etc. But then if you go ahead and say, but we also need a landing page for ceiling lights, and you create that on its own, independently of this parent category, they generally inherit that faceted navigation, creating a page where it's like basically ceiling lights with a ceiling lights facet on. You might be looking at this and thinking sort of like, how does this even happen? Like, how does this not get seen? But honestly, it does. Like, this exists in so many places. More often than not, they actually end up being indexable as well, which is even scarier. Another cause of duplication, which I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on solving, is having like multiple entry points into one product list. So what I mean by this is where a user can enter, say, 2 different subcategories, apply 2 different facets, land on the same product list, but also 2 different URLs at the end of the day. So we have an example here on the left. Yeah, that's right, left. Don't check my left and right there. We have an example here on the left where somebody goes to the men's shoes category, and on the right, the running shoes category off sports. And then on the running shoes side, they apply a facet of men's, and on the men's shoes side, they apply a facet of running. Now, you've got 2 product lists here that are just men's running shoes, basically, but in this example, it's 2 different URLs. I know that I just made this up. I typed this into like Google Draw, pasted it in here, but this is a real world example that exists in a lot of places on a lot of sites. What this actually causes is your typical duplicate content issues in terms of like ranking. So this might be a graph that resonates with quite a few people. If you've struggled with like duplicate content, even like international cannibalization, like same language cannibalization, you see this graph quite often where the competing page starts ranking, your canonical page, if it was like set up correctly, would like drop out of the SERPs, and then when it comes back, the rank's always lower. Invariably, this happens a little bit more frequently than just this, but for the sake of getting a graph on the screen, I kept the data quite simple. And then also like diluted link authority. So I'm glad I'm not the first person today to say the word page rank on stage in like 2024, but this slide, basically shows the how like page rank is spread throughout the site. Now, if you imagine you create this layer of subcategories that are super important from a commercial perspective, but then you duplicate that again, the amount of authority reaching those pages and the value, almost like your vote for how visible those pages should be, like massively diminishes. So removing that duplication ensures that the value only reaches the pages you actually care about. So how do we solve this? Now, a very simple solution to a complex problem, but it's not simple, this. I'm trying to make it look simple. So in this example, it has to start at a category level, and it's basically building your entire structure beyond that with facets, what I'd consider to be like high value facets, like the ones that essentially the combinations that then create category pages. So I'm not talking about like colors, I'm talking about like product attributes, or like the sport, in this case, the use case, the range. The all products category, you can just ignore that for now. That's basically to build the categories from, generally like low organic value. For example, Nike have a shoes and clothing all products category, as far as I know. They probably don't show in the SERPs, but everything after that that's built off that with the facets does. So in this example, we have, say, the shoes category. You apply the facet of running, and you have running shoes. And then the same with women's shoes. You apply both of those facets and you have women's running shoes. Now, if you build your new menu structure from these faceted combinations, you would end up with a way to navigate a website, and from multiple different points, you would only ever end up on the same URL. That makes it sound like, so the same URL exists for like the same product range, if you will. Because I struggled explaining that, I have a visual representation. So on the left, we have user A, both of which are user A and user B, both of which trying to get to their women's hiking shoes available by Adidas. I've picked this example because it's quite lengthy, to be honest. Like if I picked running shoes, this would just be one slide, and I was kind of cautious that I was not going to meet the time, to be honest. So we have user A and user B. On the left-hand side, they're clicking on hiking and outdoor under the women's category, the women's department. And then user B is going sports and then clicking on hiking. User A then clicks on the hiking quick link on the women's shoes, and user B clicks on the hiking footwear on the hiking page. At this point, user A is at that women's hiking shoes category page, and user B selects a facet for women's on the hiking shoes category. At this point, both of the users have taken two completely different paths, but landed on the same URL. This is how site structure should be when we're talking about faceted navigation. There's no reason for the duplication to happen if it's set up correctly. So just to recap, like level one, we've got like the department pages. Bear in mind, these are just level names that I've given to it. It's not like an industry standard thing. You can name them whatever you want. Level one, we have like department pages, not always like necessary for like niche sites. And it's a unique page type. I'm sure you all know this, like department page type, not a PLP. Then under that we have the category pages. So some sites, if not most, can start at this level. You have the PLPs that are basically formulating all of the page types under here. And then at subcategory level, so this is where we're introducing the facets to build out our structure. And again, PLP page type. So building on top of this foundation, one of the things that we could do to build on top of, say, we've got our important, say, categories, subcategories. Like one of the things that we can do to build out category coverage for where it actually matters is to selectively index facets and filters. So what I mean by that is not saying, like, you can do this if your site's small enough. In fact, we had a chat on our roundtable where there's a gentleman who could probably do this with his site, where you can index all color facets, index all style facets. Just depends how many of those facets you have and what the value is there. Like, what's the decision? Is it because you know there's value sat behind them? Now, I would propose that this is possibly a better approach. So selecting which facets and filters to index by using basically what's written on the right of the screen there. Probably not going to have time to run through that process in absolute detail. There's another chap sat on the front row here who knows this as well, like inside out, I'm sure. He spoke about this on the roundtable, and it basically mirrored what I've written on this slide here. So he's also an expert if I'm not available. Men's running shoes, as the example here, with the facets of colour underneath them. Basically, I've assigned these a fake revenue value, but also base this off a site that I know doesn't index the colour yellow for the men's running shoes page. What they've done for this page is they have canonicalized it to the parent, which is like pretty much the standard approach. They could go one further and add a page level no index tag to it. For those that are valuable, we would say basically index them, self-canonicalize them. But the most important part of this is making sure they've got dynamic content. So men's running shoes, the H1, when you select the, say, black filter or facet, it goes men's black running shoes. Whatever your syntax for that page is. Page title's updated as well. Maybe you drop out the category copy so it's not duplicate off the men's running shoes, probably a good idea. So you can really cover more categories with easy, really, like less work. Now, one additional thing that you can do is build out your links basically with quick linking modules. So got an example from M&S here where they're basically, a lot of the times these are actually dynamically populated. But what you can do is get really deep into your site architecture to important subcategories that would otherwise be 2, 3, or 4 clicks away. So I think straight fit stretch jeans, bit of a mouthful that. To say that, to get to that, it's 3 clicks basically, but in this case it's 2. I know it's only coming up by 1, but it means a lot in terms of like actually getting there, like how to get there. So that's super important, and there's probably no other way you couldn't do this any better than that as far as I can see. But it just gives you a really good option for increasing the amount of links into those high priority subcategories. So just to summarize now, bringing it all together, we have a sort of overarching look. I've tried to pick out the key values of each of these page types so I could summarize it in the most succinct way possible. At department pages, we have, in terms of organic terms, like mainly brand. It's probably going to be brand. In terms of like generic terms, people searching for department pages like homeware store. It's probably like that. Those are the kind of pages that might rank for that term. But at the end of the day, it's a local result really. It's not really going to drive you any valuable stuff through your department page. Non-brand organic volume for these generally low, and conversion intent probably quite low as well. When we get to the categories though, that non-brand volume is high, so like search volume for these pages, and the conversion intent is like probably like low to medium, getting into that like warmer territory. Subcategories, conversion intent is much higher. You've still got quite a bit of like non-brand organic volume here, but what you need to be aware of is like the amount of pages by these levels increase for sure by this point. In the area of like subcategories as well, it's worth saying this is where most revenue opportunity sits within this and the next one, basically high value facets. This is where most revenue opportunity sits within e-commerce sites, like in terms of unrealized opportunity. So if you get all of this structure right, you can basically capitalize on the opportunity that's out there. And then the high value facets and filters. Again, search volume is going to be low here, but if you highlight, say, a bunch of facets to index that are really relevant, really specific to your product offering, the conversion intent is going to be super high. There is something to be said about the types of SERPs that are starting to show in this area. I think Sophie talked a little bit about that before, so just be aware there. And then with the necessary facets and filters, so this is everything else basically. The stuff for user experience, again, canonicalize it to a parent, and then add a page level no index tag. I think that's me. Thanks a lot, everyone.